Okay, good evening and welcome to the September 4th, 2024 meeting of the Goffstown Economic Development Council. If everyone could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If we could do a roll call, starting with Joanne, please.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
Oscar Revelo, alternate. Dick Bruno, vice chair.
Chet Bowen, chair.
Chris Barrett, alternate.
Charlie Birchmeyer, member.
John Napoli, member.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Representative.
Great. I'm going to skip one thing. Let's go to the minutes. Everyone get a chance to review the minutes? Okay. Can I get a motion?
I'll motion to approve the minutes of August 7th.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Dick, second by Chris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes. Today we have guest Cam Perlman from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Committee to talk about the Brownfields program. If you'd like to come up, Cam, that'd be great.
Excellent, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Bowen. Members of the board, my name is Cam Perlman. I work for the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. For those who don't know, we are one of 9 regional planning commissions. We mainly do program federal transportation dollars throughout our region, but we also help communities with grants, with master plans, hazard mitigation plans, and one of the things we've been really successful with is our EPA Brownfields program. We have received over $1 million in EPA federal funds over the past decade, where we've helped redevelop sites in the region. In fact, our last grant, we helped a few sites in Goffstown, just down the road. I believe it was 28 Depot Street, and then the abutting property on Church Street, those Fletcher Mountain parcels. So we received another Brownfields assessment grant. For those who don't know, it allows property owners, private or municipally owned property, to have phase 1 and phase 2 site assessments, which can help clear up any potential liability. We help do reuse plans, and it can help be the next step to obtain cleanup funding. Our qualified environmental professional, Credary Associates, who was supposed to join tonight, but
He's here.
He is here.
I figured it out.
Oh, great.
I'm here. The screen is black.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, he's here.
Credary is, again, we selected them to be our basically our consultant, and they're based out of Maine, but they have a long history of doing brownfields work in New Hampshire and throughout New England. And I'll pass it over to Judd to talk a little bit more about how the program works. But yeah, I just want to give an introduction about the Planning Commission for those who didn't know, and let you know about this Brownfields program, and just kind of, we're pitching to all of our communities in the region to say, we have this money available to be used on sites. And so maybe tonight we can walk away here knowing that you guys are going to be thinking about maybe some potential sites in Goffstown. Maybe you already have some off the top of your head, or maybe you can even point us in the direction of property owners or developers, or any municipal lots that the town's looking to redevelop. So Judd, I don't know how much of that you heard, but I'll pass it over to you, and maybe you could talk about some of the sites we've been looking at.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I only heard about 30 seconds of that. But, so basically, the Brownfields program can pay for any environmental due diligence, and for those that aren't familiar with the commercial property transaction or anything like that, we do a phase 1 environmental site assessment, which is more or less a desk study and looking at DES and EPA records, and we come up with a list of recognized environmental conditions that we would need to investigate. And then we'd go to a phase 2, which is the actual, testing the building materials, the soil, the groundwater, the air, etc. And we can do all sorts of other things like that as well. If a property is going into redevelopment or being sold or purchased by a developer, we can do things like site surveys, historic preservation analyses. I mean, really, you name it. If there's an environmental roadblock or even just a checkbox for a developer and a property transaction, or the town acquiring a property, or the town divesting a tax-liened property, anything like that, the program can really help, and it's a grant of free services from us, basically. And I can get into more details if you want to, but we can do anything from like a condemned residential building that the town took for back taxes. We can go do like a pre-demolition hazardous building materials survey. Or if somebody is donating land to the town on their back 40 and there was a dumping site and you want to put a trailhead there. I mean, you can kind of like think outside the box. A lot of people think that the brownfields is kind of just like those big mill buildings, but it can be a lot of things, or even little mom and pop gas stations. And the big site that I've been eyeing in Goffstown is I call it the St. Claudine Academy. And I've reached out to that owner multiple times. I got a hold of their facilities director twice, and he just will not circle back to me. But it looks like a fantastic housing opportunity, and it's just sitting there vacant. It's driving me crazy. And really, the only other one, Goffstown, I mean, surprisingly, you guys, you look like your downtown is really fully utilized. I mean, there might be some older buildings, but the only other kind of eyesore that I saw was the Budget Gas former mobile gas station, but it still looks like an active business. Mm-hmm. So like Cam said, I caught at the end, if you have any other ideas on site, I'll look into them. But if you had any insights, in particular on the Claudine Academy, we'd appreciate that.
I'm assuming he's talking about the villa.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, we would also love for that to not be there.
Or be used.
Does anyone friendly or have a contact with the owner? Like Judd said, we can only kind of reach out to that facilities manager, and it hasn't been successful.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
We had, a few years ago, we had a meeting with the owner,
Mm-hmm.
and we met with, there was somebody on the committee here that worked for one of the utility companies, and we were trying to figure out whether it was worth it to bring gas up to the site from, right now it's down by the county property,
Mm-hmm.
down by the county farm. And they did a study, and they said that there wasn't enough business to make it worthwhile, because somebody would have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the owner of the company wasn't willing to, and they said that they wanted to move their business there. They're currently in Hudson, and
That's at the cable company, or is that who owns that currently?
It's a tech company.
yeah,
Okay.
that's the name of
Yeah.
it, but it's not cable.
Okay.
And then
I
once
meant,
they
I meant like
realize-
physical, like cables. I think they do or wires or something like that. Anyway, I could be wrong, but
A handful of years ago, many years ago, they approached the town about purchasing it after they had realized how much asbestos is in that building. And they offered it to the town, and we said no.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
As far as I know, that's the last communication and then
Yeah.
that discussion.
And, yeah, we haven't
And
heard from
that is something, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut anybody
I
off.
was just gonna say, we haven't heard from them since.
Yeah, I've made contact a couple times, and I keep trying, and I'm just hitting dead ends. But we have numerous housing developers in our network that would take that building on. And if the town could get control of that building, regardless of the amount of asbestos and things like that, so CAM's money is just for the environmental testing, not for cleanup. But there's direct cleanup grants from the EPA that are right now up to $5 million. And then the New Hampshire DES has a revolving loan fund that they can grant municipalities. I think their limit is capped at 200,000. And then both Monadnock Economic Development, which they have a statewide program, they can grant you up to $500,000. So there's avenues to get it cleaned up. It's just getting either the owner on board to let us go in there and help, or getting like a non-profit in there who's eligible for grant money or low interest loans, which is a different conversation, or the town getting control of it. But it's just so much better than a building sitting there doing nothing. And there's people all over the place right now looking for brownfields tax credits, low income, affordable workforce housing tax credits. The housing need is amazing, and this is just like an amazing opportunity. So we just need to get the owner to actually either relinquish the property to somebody else or even just make contact with us.
Is there a reason why you couldn't contact the owner? Did they just always turn you over to the facilities manager?
I've sent several emails to the email on record at the Secretary of State. I've called the main office numerous times, and they turned me over to this facilities guy. I've emailed them. Well, I spoke to him twice, and I emailed him numerous times following up, and he keeps saying he's going to talk to the owners, and just kind of just crickets.
Okay, I can search my records and find their contact information. There was the owner, the owner was a woman, and there was another woman with her that was sort of like the manager, and we mainly dealt with the manager, but the owner also did meet with us. So I can find that in my contact information.
Thank you.
Yeah, anything would be great. I actually I turned this property over to a developer I've worked with on numerous projects named John Levatas. And he told me he tried to reach out too and couldn't make any headway. So,
like I said, the last plan that they showed us was they wanted to move their business there. This was, a few years ago when housing wasn't really an issue. Where, we were looking more for commercial at the time, but then when they found out they needed gas for some reason, whatever it is that they do, they had to have natural gas. And it wasn't there, and they weren't willing to pay to have it extended all that length. So, it didn't work out for them financially. But again, they're still, the lights are still on. It's not like they've abandoned the building. I mean, they're taking care of the property, but it's like you said, it is a vacant building just sitting there. But at least it's not corroding.
oh yeah, I mean, losing heat in a building is the worst thing you could do.
Yeah. There are people in there. I mean, there's something going on in there. They have the lights come on, and I think the fire department has had some activity in there for training purposes. But I will definitely look up that contact information and get back to you.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic. And I don't like to call out private property owners too, but I was just curious on the status of the, the former mobile budget gas. Like, it looked active when I went by, but kind of not in its best state.
Is that the one in Pinardville, near the school?
Or the one by
Across
the
from
cemetery.
Oh, by the cemetery. That's the one in the village up by the cemetery. That actually, there's a new owner for that property. He recently went to the zoning board for approval to install a canopy, because it did not have a canopy over the gas tanks, and that was a few months ago. And he owns a lot of gas stations in the area. I don't remember what his name was, but we do have the contact info for him as well.
Thank you. Did you have a
Okay,
question?
I mean,
Sorry.
normally we would assess a property like that, trying to remove the tanks, make sure the gas station wasn't there for like a higher or better use. But if he's going to rehabilitate the building or build something new, we could use our actual program for that. I don't like replacing a gas station with a gas station, but that would be an eligible expense if we wanted to do that.
Yes, so when he came to the ZBA, he only came for the purpose of installing a canopy, and he didn't sound like he was planning to make any other changes. He's kind of someone who comes in and buys stations. This station happened to be up for sale, and takes it over and does some modifications to it, but not a lot. So I doubt that he would want to replace it at this time, but certainly ask him that question.
I had a question. This is Dick Bruno. I'm just wondering, the characteristics of properties, what would we be looking for as far as the characteristics of properties that would qualify for brownfields? I always thought brownfield just was contaminated soil and that sort of thing, gas stations included. So what are the characteristics that would qualify?
Judd,
It's really,
go ahead.
I was going to say, if I heard correctly, it was Dick, but it's really any property could be a brownfield, except for like if it's a single family house that's being sold just kind of on the market. We can't really go do like a lead and asbestos inspection because it's just a single family to single family. But basically anything else that might have lead paint, asbestos, PCBs, then you're going into commercial properties, all of those have that stuff. Anything with tanks, and obviously your mill buildings and all of that. Anything in an urban area, we can usually just make the case that, this urban fill here, this coal ash, the mill dumped a bunch of stuff here and used a bunch of fill material. It can really be almost anything other than just kind of a general single family otherwise. Just as an example, we're doing a project in Jaffrey, and there was 2 single-family homes that DOT purchased. They're doing a new roundabout thing, and they turned out they don't need them. So we're doing hazardous building materials for pre-renovation. DOT is going to liquidate them. But it's not a single-family to single-family transaction, if that makes sense. But we're going in and we're doing pre-renovation surveys, and the Historical Society is going to purchase it because one of them is actually a historic building. Just things like that. We've made trailheads. We've done little waterfront parks just on a little piece of land and, kind of a pocket infill thing where, industrial building used to be. I know I saw another building, I want to say it was on Mill Street, right in the village. It looks like it had been converted into 2 apartments right there, right below the school, right as you come down that hill. But that would be a brownfield site if somebody wanted to convert that from apartments to commercial or something like that. Does that make sense?
Well, that building, I think you're talking about the old grist mill, which is
Yes, yeah, that's
down
it,
below. Yeah. So something like that. Of course, that's historical as well. So, but there's been some questions since we've been dealing with dams and changeover of dams. Does that qualify?
That building will qualify. We have done some dam work, and that is very situational, and we can assess dams. It's really an ownership issue, and the issues we have, especially in New Hampshire, is that usually the dams are owned by an adjoining property owner, but the river is state-owned. So we can talk about that a little bit more if you have a dam in mind. We might be able to do something. It's just very situational of where the property lines actually are.
The dam is owned by the state.
All of them.
Yeah.
So you could.
We can assess state-owned properties, and we can do testing for that if the town had some sort of interest in doing it. There would just have to be, to meet the definitions of brownfields, there has to be some environmental roadblock, essentially just to keep it short, preventing the town from buying, redeveloping, expanding, or improving that property. And improving could be dam removal for fish patches, something like that.
Yeah, thank you.
the assessments have already been done on that dam, right?
Well, they're still going
No.
through it, right? Have you heard
Like
anything
initial
more?
assessments haven't,
Initial assessments, but in January, they were supposed to start a deep dive on that, and that was waiting pending grant approval from a grant that they filed, so no. Short answer,
Did they
yeah.
not get the grant, or they haven't heard?
I haven't heard back what they've gotten, and I don't think they've heard.
This is the
I'm sorry,
state.
it's hard to hear a few people. Who applied for a grant?
It's me. The state pertaining to
Oh, okay.
one of the dams in our town.
Yeah, the dam is now decommissioned, and the town didn't want to take responsibility for it because of all the maintenance that, the large number that you'd have in maintenance, but
Well, we
supposedly-
can't
Right.
take responsibility.
But there were, my understanding is that there was money available in a grant to dismantle the grant and make something else that's there and improve that area. So if we wanted to improve that area,
Not
just.
quite, but that's.
All right,
okay.
I'm just-
No, it's all right, I won't over-explain.
Yeah,
but, it was for
I'm throwing
the
out.
fish passage for the ladder so that they could keep the dam itself. But
Right.
that assessment on the structural stability of the dam is a whole other part of what they're doing. It's multifaceted, and we in no way, shape, or form have any control over it. So it's
Right, right.
a lot to explain, but.
No, I've had a little bit of background because I worked with the people that were dealing with I guess the group that was dealing with the dam and what was happening with it. But I guess my point is, if it came to the fact that the state did get money, could some of, and if there was an improvement, or we're trying to just continue to make a falls there for just the betterment of the town, because I don't know what's going to end up there if that dam leaks. Could this money be used to interact with state money, or could it just throw that out? I don't know.
Absolutely. So, well, again, we can only do the environmental investigation / assessment component. So, in the dam removal work I've done, obviously there's sediment and things like that built up above the dam. So you need to go do, basically, sediment coring and testing and stuff. So when you remove it, you figure out what suspended solids are going to move down the river. We're actually doing a gigantic one down with the EPA down in Connecticut right now. But yeah, we could certainly use Southern New Hampshire's money for that. That might be a better fit for the New Hampshire DES. Also has their own brownfields program. So that might be something where there's sort of a partnership between, I don't know, is that DOT or Dam Removals Program? I don't know who's running that. But that might be something where, DES, DOT, Southern New Hampshire, the town, and kind of all the stakeholders get together and figure out which pots of money go where. That would be a interesting meeting to get everybody together and strategize on that, though.
Thank you. If anyone here could, off the top of my head, maybe not, but if we think of a property that could be eligible, we see there's an environmental barrier, we think, oh my goodness, we talk to these people, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, I'm going to leave some FAQs here.
Great.
My phone number's on it. My email is on it, but Joanne could provide my email, and you can reach out anytime. You can give us a call if you just have a question. If you're like, I just drove past this property and
Yep.
I think it may be good. Just give me a call and we can talk through it and see if it makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions
Yes.
or ideas?
No, I was going to say too, just on that dam removal thing, that's part of the, if I'm not mistaken, that's part of the Merrimack River watershed, right?
The dam, yes.
So I know there's other, I don't want to step on Camp's toes too, but I know the National Regional Planning Commission and the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission in Massachusetts, they've been talking about stuff about the Merrimack River watershed and water quality stuff. So that might be something that I might be able to connect you folks with to see if there's any other resources out there that might help with that too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All All right, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. And,
Thank you for coming.
I hope to hear from you guys. So.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are those right there?
Pass them.
They're out there.
Yeah, sorry, I should have
Thank
passed
you.
them on. Okay, Judd, thank you.
Thank
Yeah, of course,
you.
anytime. Yeah, I'm happy to drive out anytime and have a meeting too. I just was trying to be cost conscious, so.
Yeah.
Have a good evening.
Thank
You
you.
too, thank you.
I'll send you those contacts.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Great, appreciate
Okay,
it.
take care.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gail.
Okay. Did you and I see that we have first impressions, an update on that?
Yes, I just wanted to give you an update. So they had a meeting last week when I was away
Yep.
with Scott. And we have another meeting scheduled for Monday. So the way they want to work at this time, and they've done it in the past, is they want to work with what they call a sister town. So Scott contacted the director in Peterborough and asked if Peterborough would be interested. So the way it would work is we would, have our meetings and decide, what categories we're going to look at. And then we would go to Peterborough and look at theirs and fill out the questionnaires. And then this Scott's office would put together a report. And then the same would happen with us, vice versa. The Peterborough people would come here. And Peterborough is very interested. So we're having a meeting Monday, and I think he invited the director to that meeting.
Great.
So we're making some headway.
Scott.
Slowly, but we're making it.
Questions on that? Everyone's okay. And then I see Economic Development Director. Regrettably, we couldn't.
Yeah,
But-
if you want to, schedule another date, we can certainly do that. I included the list that I had provided you several months ago, but I just added a few. I've been trying to figure out which towns and which cities do have directors. So far we have them in Derry, and I did provide the salary. It's kind of approximate because some of this information is from 2023. The town of Exeter has a director. They do not have an EDC committee, and neither does Derry.
Sure.
The city of Manchester has one, and the city of Nashua, they just hired one last year. And the town of Hopkinton has a part-time person, and the town of Londonderry does not have one. They assign that to the town manager and the planning director, as Bedford does. They do it the same way.
Okay. So just as a point of discussion, as we try to put this together, starting with what we do know, there are avenues to growth in Goffstown for new businesses to come in, existing businesses to thrive. The overall point of this, to really simplify it, would be to have someone in between these meetings, because we've paid for a lot of research in the past, and we get some pretty extensive reports. And on this council, I've noticed that there's not a lot of time that the rest of us have in between. There's a lot of talented people, but there's not a lot of time in between. I know, so here's things that I think we know, and then please challenge me on them, Joanna, if I'm not correct. Not a ton of commercial zoning that is appealing right now.
There's not a ton of parcels zoned commercial, but there's also not barely any that are available.
Right.
Or vacant, I should say. Available or vacant. Buildings available or vacant property.
Correct. So, not a ton going on there. We have very limited gas and sewer going different places.
Correct.
So we cannot look at this point right now, as much as we say we would like to have site-ready plots to attract new businesses. Without those things, it cannot happen
And the
to be
sewer-
site-ready.
And the sewer commission doesn't have any plans to do any expansions. They always leave it up to a developer who comes in to do the expansion of the lines.
Okay. Median age in Goffstown is 44, so
Yeah.
Top earning.
Roughly, yeah.
time of your life for most people. So when I look at the combination of those things, as well as I know we had a group, and I wish I could remember their names, I want to give them credit, they were very good. You remember they came in, we met at the fire station, and they went through and they gave us all this information about how to utilize the website properly and all the things that we can do to try to draw attention to us. And check,
Oh, yeah.
thank you, and they would check bounce rate and just see
Yeah.
who's coming in and all that. So we have a lot of resources that we could even go back to, because it wasn't that long ago to develop. So in my mind, what I am thinking is, we have these meetings, we have some really good positive ideas about things that can be done, and then not a lot of time in between the meetings where someone can actually do them. So sewer doesn't have plans, but that could change if we had somebody that was constantly talking to the sewer chair and the committee, or they were going to that meeting. Zoning is always subject to change. We could take a look at that. We could look at I know that some people have told me that expansion of natural gas is a dream, but if we had someone really pushing that constantly throughout the course of the year, maybe reporting back to us here, and maybe on occasion, someone from here can just accompany you to one thing, or not you, but whoever that would be, to one thing. We could actually come up with a comprehensive mission statement and then an actual comprehensive strategic mission plan, but I do not see how viable that is as an economic development council full of people that don't have a ton of time in between the meetings. So when I would look to the select board, that's what I would be saying to them, because we also are looking at, I know that, it's out there, if it was a default year, what if we had extra businesses to help with the tax base, and couldn't we get more services applied? I don't know that it has to be sacrificing certain services that are necessary for the residents to keep the taxes at a reasonable rate. If we had a really dedicated person going out there, opening up businesses, helping businesses open up, so that we have more of a tax base to work with on a yearly basis. So there's way more than that, I think, to go through. But when I see these towns, some of them we don't have a whole lot in common with. I'm thinking specifically Goffstown and what we can do. So that's what I'm saying, but I'm thinking about anything else that anyone else wants to put on the table before we bring this forward and actually create a real formal ask. So
What I'm seeing is businesses continue to open up here. I just met with a lady yesterday. She's opening, the Shaking Crab, as you all probably know, is closed. She's opening up a business in there. She's already established on 101 in Bedford. She does catering, and she'll also have, a small area, like if you wanted to come in and buy sandwiches or for lunchtime, and prepared food, you take to go with you. And, I work with these people, that's part of what I do. I work with these people all the time. What I'm seeing is, if we really want to make a difference in the tax rate, we really need to look at something larger, something sustaining that will be around for a while. Like we have there's some even tucked away down here on Depot Street, there's some businesses down there, but we don't have a lot of those types of businesses that will really pay enough in taxes where it will matter. Or not that anybody's taxes don't matter. I don't want to give that impression. Everyone's taxes matter. I'm just saying a large chunk of money. A large business that will have acres and acres and large buildings. You know what I mean?
I do, and I think that's what I'm addressing, commercial space, right? Commercial zone space.
And I think everyone years ago imagined that would happen on the county land.
Sure.
But obviously that hasn't taken place yet, or if it ever will. So I think there needs to be a committee of some sort made up of all different people to take a look at the overall zoning of the town and say, where can we maybe change some of the zoning and see if we could add some other areas where businesses or commercial or even industrial, but not so much. Industrial's not really a big thing right now. It's more commercial. And even the commercial is, if you look at like not just retail, but if you give it an overall picture and say office use, that's not even around anymore. All of the buildings in Manchester that were office space are now being converted into apartments, most of them by Brady Sullivan. So there needs to be some kind of a plan where you look out 20 years or maybe 15 years into the future and say, okay, this is what we're going to need. Because if you think about it, more and more people are shopping online. So the big box stores are done, you know. So what's really the future going to look like? What are they going to need in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years? You know, it's you don't want to load up on something that in 5 or 10 years isn't going to be needed any longer.
So centralized warehouse space for people to pick up goods that they're delivering.
Right, and I think a lot of, we're not doing it here, but a lot of places like Londonderry and Salem, they're doing those small little neighborhoods where, you know, you've got the apartments, you've got the
Tuscan?
yeah, like things like that. I think that's where the future's going.
Yeah.
And you really need the utilities for that.
Sure
That's
do.
lifestyle developments,
Yes.
everything's there
'Cause
and included. I think that, first of all, Joanne, is the planning board looking at that sort of vision? Isn't that the purview of the planning board as to looking out to see?
No, the only thing they've done is, you know, they updated the master plan a few years
Okay,
ago.
how long ago was that?
I think it was 2022.
Oh, okay, so more recent, all right.
Yeah, and all they did was, it's a very thin update. All they did was look at the one that was done, whatever that year was, I don't even know, and just like throw on some things like, you know, do we still need this, or no, take that off, let's replace it with that. They didn't really look into the
To go deeper as
No.
to what you're
right.
saying. Because I
Southern New
remember
Hampshire, and
the-
actually Cam helped us with it.
Really?
Southern New Hampshire helped with it.
So is there a group that is their purview of?
Well, sometimes towns, and I don't know if it would be helpful in this case, but sometimes towns do charrettes where you invite the public in, you have somebody moderating, and, you know, you go over like all kinds of things, like what would you like to see in the future? And I don't know if that's would work in this case, because you're not going to get people saying like, oh, I want I want to look like Tuscan Village or something like that. This town has been notorious for saying, you know, they want it to stay as a cute little New England type community, and that's all well and good. I like that too. However, it's getting to the point where people can't afford to live here anymore. So there has to be something done to fix that. And it's not cutting services, because
Yeah.
the town keeps growing, you can't be cutting. You know, people are looking for more actually versus cutting. But there has to be a way to make up for that, and obviously money from the state's not coming like it did before, and especially even to the schools. Schools are getting less and less money, and having money come out for charter schools and homeschooling and everything is cutting it back even further. So, you know, so what do you do? Where do you get this money from?
Well, you know, I just, going way back when, I remember working on a master plan, I don't know, it was 20 years ago. But it was always the corridor. We have the corridor. It's a really unique town in the fact that we have that, just that 114 corridor is where the commercial base will exist down into Bernardville, all the
And
way
the
down.
other trouble with the corridor is that it's getting more and more crowded.
Exactly.
With curb cuts, you know, there's more curb cuts being
But
issued.
the development of towns
And-
beyond us to the west
Right.
is loading
Right.
up traffic, so
Boston.
then you get that other
Mhm.
issue. Because there's a plan on the board somewhere, there's a bypass plan, you probably have
Yeah.
known about it.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's not a thing anymore.
No, it's gone.
Yep.
There was a big ramp over to, no.
Bypasses are somewhat
You get a lot.
controversial
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
because then you're bypassing your
All the
village.
businesses, right.
And, you know,
Did you
it's
have your hand
like,
up? I'm
And they
sorry.
did that in Suncook.
Yeah, I have a
and
whole
it's
bunch
just
of
at the main
Okay.
street.
yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess I'll just ask if you want what I would ask if you were to bring this forward to the select board, just in this discussion, because I have a lot of questions. So first and foremost, and I'm going off the justification purposes of why this would be important, I think this is something you all need to talk about. Based on these other towns that have them, I'm assuming this is most of
That's the
what you
ones
could
I could find.
Okay. So I did a quick search on all these towns of what the population is. And then my second question would be, what's the percentage of property that's zoned for commercial versus residential? Because as we know in Goffstown, we have a very low percentage of property zoned commercial. So the justification for some place like the city of Manchester or even Bedford that has a much higher zoned commercial base makes it the justification of the why more important, right? So for me, I would want to see a job description, not only of what the position would do, but then also essentially a job description of what this committee does. Because in justifying the reason for a full-time position, you essentially need to justify to me and everyone else on the board why this committee is incapable of doing those things. Because you all meet, there are plenty of other committees that have working meetings, so for me, that's a big one of like, well, why can't you guys do the thing that you're asking for? If your job is just to funnel work to a full-time person, it's probably not going to go so well if we can't figure out what those things are specifically. And then that would be a really big one. So a job description for this committee, a job description for the person, and then a breakdown of essentially like a list of what this person would be doing and how that's different. Specific tasks essentially, because these are all, just at a glance, are all very different. There's no job descriptions here, but the why, and then if they have an EDC or not, and their overall population, it's all over the place. So I would connect with some of these towns and kind of figure out what they're doing and how it's been going. Because as Joanne said, we're growing. All of our departments are severely understaffed. It is going to be a very hard sell for you guys to justify the need for economic development when we just don't have the zoned properties to support it black and white, right? So the justification of it is going to be the thing that supports you guys bringing that forward, if I'm just being blatantly honest. Like, it's a hard sell when we're in a default and every single department's in need of positions and they're not even asking for them because of cost. So just throwing that out there. I want to be completely transparent with you guys, but if you brought this to me today, I'd just say, no, it's not, but obviously there's a lot more legwork that can be done. I'm not saying it's not possible, I'm just saying for me up front, those are all the questions I would want the answers to.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. These are all the same questions I would ask, a few years ago. I think what we need to figure out for a job description is, like, I don't know if we have an economic development director, that we have an economic development council. I don't know. I don't think those two things really need to exist together. I think what's more effective would be a full-time economic development director, because we are not going to talk about our lack of zoned commercial properties and how that's affecting any new business coming in or any large business. So that person would, everything I already said, that person would be doing that. They would be going to the zoning on their own. They'd be doing the research, they'd be looking for grants, really doing sort of some of those deep dives into it. So we'll have to look as a committee at what we really need to put down on paper for that. This committee has accomplished very little over the course of the years, and it is not because we have people that don't have great ideas. You had brought up something about looking around at all the businesses and why, like, just the parking, or is there water overflow, or those kinds of things. Without a full-time person, we're not going to be able to get a real answer to that with all the businesses. So that person would have to be dedicated to that role, actually getting out into the community a lot more than we possibly could. So that one, there's no reason for a committee if there is a full-time person that we're paying. I mean, that's just me. We can all have that discussion, but I also see an actual person lobbying, in a sense. I know it's a dirty word, but lobbying to figure out how we can get more expansion of utilities and gas and sewer, and actually going to the sewer commission and coming up with research on all these other towns, because what you're asking can be done, but I can't do it. And I don't know who could on this committee. And that's sort of like, that's the rub, right? Because I'm with you. I don't have the answers to these questions. Why are you going to take taxpayer money and throw it at this position? And my answer would be, I think we'd have to ask the taxpayers to invest first, and that's a difficult ask. I fully understand that. Yep. But I don't see, what I can tell you is that this committee has not accomplished a whole lot. And we'd have zero influence over the master plan and not zero, but you know what I'm saying. There is not a lot of influence we have over the master plan. No one from the planning board will even come to this meeting, even though it's supposed to have a planning board member here to help us talk about site-ready plans. No one wants to do it, am I correct?
Has anyone gone to planning board?
Planning board,
Do they have
We-
public comment?
Not really, but you could get yourself on the agenda.
yeah, maybe we can do that too, to have someone here. We used to have, it was me at first, when I first moved into town, and then I think we had a couple others afterwards.
Isn't this an arm of the planning board?
In a way.
No.
Under who's doing, no?
It's selectmen,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. And I've asked a few times this past 2 years, and no one wants to do it.
What, go to the planning board?
No, to be a
Oh, have
rep
them
here,
come.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it makes it just really difficult. I keep thinking like about Pinardville and Grassmere in the village and Goffstown as a whole, and people wanted to stay quaint, and I look at old postcards of what Goffstown used to be, and it was pretty amazing. And I'm not saying it's not amazing now, but it had even more quaintness and even more connection. We had a hotel, we had, things that people would be drawn to. We still have Mountain Canoe.
It was like more of a vacation type
But-
area. They would come here skiing and
Yeah.
they would come swimming.
But I mean, I don't know how that affected the economy as a whole, but I mean, those are things that maybe by looking backwards, we can see successes, because there were businesses here, I don't know how large they were, but they were larger than we have now in areas of the town that obviously you must be able to have commercial. Probably now there's houses and stuff on them, I think.
They didn't have zoning until like the 60s.
Okay. But we have like we have so many natural resources and beautiful things in our town. There's ways for us to grow, to still keep it quaint. But I mean, how do you go about researching that and finding out how something like that would draw revenue to the town in regards to taxes, draw people to the town, to draw other businesses? I mean, I guess, Amazon warehouse is a great one, right? Because it brings jobs and it brings, money to the town. But that's not really quaint, is it? It's
Going
tough.
back to what Chet was saying, and I think I agree with what you say. I think, because there's opportunities that lay right in front of us right now. I mean, talked about that villa. We're always talking about the villa. Nobody seems to know what's going on about the villa. Well, we haven't had the opportunity to get there and dig in and say, what could happen, what needs to happen to develop that piece of property. I look at the Shaw's shopping center.
Yeah.
This is some great opportunity. There's pad sites down there that are there, but we just don't have, capability to have, working on it full time and to interact with the other committees that are around. We go to the select board, what do you think? Go to the planning board, what do you think? What have you worked on? And we just don't have that connection. And I think that's what's lacking, because I think there are opportunities in the town to improve on what we have, and they're not small pieces. I think the shopping centers down in Pinardville, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of commercial, but it's there. It maybe needs to be redeveloped. So doesn't the villa. It's just sits there, like he said before. So you go by it, you see lights on, nothing's happening. So those are opportunities, and I think they're larger opportunities as well. They're not small ones.
So,
But,
yeah.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
So just echoing the same things, and not to just keep
Situation.
echoing and belaboring. I think to summarize, from my perspective, is what you're mentioning. It's a matter of capacity, bandwidth of the group, and then also expertise. I mean, I think you mentioned it. We're a lot of well-intentioned individuals and have historical backgrounds and participation in certain things, but I don't know. Many of us are experts at going out and actually converting some of these desires into action. So, I think, like Kelly had mentioned, I think, it's pretty obvious that it might not be the ideal time, but I think we've talked about it before. If we can start planning and putting something together and at least start having the conversation, maybe it's a no now, but to your point, we've accomplished little, and I think it goes back to that capacity plus expertise. So I think if we can start meeting offline we have to do something and move in a direction And I think,
Guys, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time concentrating on John. Go ahead.
I think potentially, with our small group to take a look, and I think we should probably start contacting some of these folks, some of the economic directors at different towns that have that expertise, and so we can start focusing on putting a solid business plan together, whether it's, a no this year or whatever, but we have to put something tangible, and I think tap into, hopefully get put in the right direction of people that have done this, so when we create a job description, we have tangible items and elements from what they've accomplished that we can try to match for Goffstown and put something together and start having some direction and funneling some of these desires and ideas into something.
I agree. I think when hearing you say that, it brings me back to maybe our goal needs to be one. Come up with a rationale to answer those questions, to give us the best chance to create an economic development director. Because so much of what we have on our goals here, I know, Joanne, you had mentioned creating a committee. We create a committee, the committee tells us stuff, we do nothing with it because we don't have the time. That's just the people on this group. So I'm looking at, your questions are very good. I mean, they're they're all encompassing, and there are things we need to answer. So I think maybe that's what we change our conversation to almost completely until we get that done. But sorry, were you gonna?
No, I just add to that because we have started some projects. When Scott was in here, we were trying to use those resources. We're just to try to identify available open spaces. That kind of just, I don't know what happened to that. It just kind of fell flat. I know we were having trouble getting a survey out, but that was just a basic thing that we weren't able to get anything concrete out of it.
He didn't get enough responses to actually get solid information because it was.
And was that? Do you think that's lack of time or effort to get that? I mean, because we're just one of his projects, and I know a few of us got involved working with him. And with that, again, if you had a person that says, we're directing this thing, do you think that would have come together better?
So they did have the survey. It was an electronic survey, but we could also do paper if needed. And they did send it out to pretty much all the businesses that we wanted to focus on, not every single business, but the ones we had decided to focus on. And then Sarah and Scott, that was about it, right? Just the two of you.
Yeah.
Went out to areas of Pinardville where the more of the, like Daniel Plummer Road, where some of those industrial businesses are, and a few other places where there were, businesses that were close together, and tried to knock on doors and talk to people. The problem is that people, they just, I hate to say it, but they just don't have the time.
They're working, you're interrupting their
Right,
work.
they don't want to spend even like 15 minutes stopping what they're doing.
I put it back and
Yeah,
got
and
some
where is
done,
where is that going? My time is my time going to be worth anything?
Right. And we did get some good answers from people, which
we did.
Yeah.
Which but it wasn't enough. There weren't enough responses in order to make it worthwhile in the study that he was trying to do for us.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. I thought did you?
Yeah, I just have some more, and I just want to preface, I'm not pushing back against you guys to discourage you by any means, just to be very honest about what I would be asking to save you the trouble of having to do, put it in a good perspective to help. But some of I'm listening to what you guys are saying about the things that are going on. So with the committee and the goals and all of that. And so a couple of the questions that I would have to ask based on that is, Chet, you mentioned the time between meetings and the ability to do the work that you guys want to do. So my question would be I serve on other committees that have working meetings where they're doing the work in their meetings. Or in between. So I guess that would be the question for you guys probably to decipher how much of the stuff has to be done during business hours, during the day, how much of the work could be done in the evenings. When we're talking about, assessments or whatnot, are those things that Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission could be assisting with? I don't know if we've regrouped with them to see like what kind of stuff they can help with. Maybe that zoning thing is something that they could help with. I don't know. But then also for the planning board mention, you guys can also like insert yourself in there if you want to just be in the know by rotating like, hey, I'm going to cover planning board meetings this month. I'm on multiple other committees that do that where they assign their people. So if you're only meeting once a month, you could probably add on one more night. That wouldn't be a huge flex to anybody. Just throwing out some suggestions of things that I'm countering what you're telling me you need, because I think you guys do have the capacity to do some of this stuff. Maybe it's not reasonable for everybody, but I'm going to keep pushing because it's never a good time to ask for more money, but I think if you can at least jump in and try to do some of the work, and either it's great and that's awesome, or the justification is like we literally can't do these things that need to be done, and then that kind of covers all of your bases, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to be like you guys aren't, you know, you can do more, but I think you can do some of this stuff, or at least go to Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, like, is any of these resources available? Here's a list of stuff we want to accomplish. Can you help us with any of these things? Because they'll be able to connect with grants and other opportunities that are out there for a whole slew of things. So I'm going to keep pushing back on this one because it will be to get me to be like, yeah, this is a good idea is going to be hard. That's with the creation of any new position in town, it takes years. So I'm going to push hard from the beginning to give you guys hopefully a better viewpoint of justifying the why, because I know it exists, but you all have to be able to put it on paper.
Yeah, and to your point, maybe we're not taking advantage of some resources that are out there that wouldn't take up too much time, so it's something to take a look at too. The goal is to accomplish something positive, and I'm openly sitting here on camera so frustrated with being on this committee since 2016 and seeing so little, and that's what's led me down this sort of logical path to I think we need a person. But we can also take a look at some of those other resources. So we can certainly do that too, but sorry.
Well, just a question and following up what Kelly said, is it time for a work group to get together and just say, I mean, we do these goals. I mean, I've been looking at these goals for a couple of years now, and I just think it's got to be more pointed with regard to how do you do it. Let's take a couple of specific pieces of property and say, how do we get to a point where we can bring somebody in that might bring a developer? We might have grants that are appealing to a developer. You know, again, talk to the developers, but I guess, yeah, little pieces at a time. You know, right? Little pieces on the big pieces. Okay. Because some of the, you know, for instance, identifying open storefronts. You know, I like to think, yeah, we'd be able to promote that, but how much does that do to help the town in general? I think the big pieces are the things that will help the town. If we're looking for revenue sources, which again is a justification to get somebody, we can say, yeah, look at, we could create more revenue for the town, but we have to spend a little bit too.
The other thing I wonder, Chet, just going off of what you're saying is, there's this list here of all these other towns and cities that have economic development committees. Some of them, right?
Some of them, yep.
I wonder if through New Hampshire Municipal Association, there's a way that you all could get in touch with some of these or go to a meeting and see what they're doing, especially for some of these bigger places that are able, or smaller towns. I mean, Exeter has 16,000 people. Hopkinton is about the same as us. You know, I just did a quick search. Bedford has 17,000. So I wonder if that's an opportunity for you guys to jump in and just go to one of their meetings and make a connection, or like put together a regional economic development committee meeting. I mean, I don't know if that's possible.
Invite an economic development director to come to one of our meetings.
Yeah,
that's
possibly.
like the town of Hopkinton would be like a good. I mean, they're big things at the fair, but it'd be interesting. They have the halftime person. I'd love to just see what they do.
I'm just throwing ideas out there, so I'm thinking about it.
Remember I mean, unfortunately the position was eliminated, but we had the director for Concord here once, and that actually was very helpful to hear everything. And I think there was some work that we were able to do with that, so maybe we can do that. I'd also like to ask if everyone, just What's the turnaround for minutes on these meetings, Joanne?
On these meetings, so I'm doing the minutes right now.
Oh, okay.
So just a few days, there'll be short minutes.
The
So if we
RSA
can-
is 5 days.
Okay, so if we could just take a look at the minutes and then each come up with one resource that maybe Kelly mentioned, or think of the things that I put out there as things, I did not cover it all by any means, but what that person would do. And just one thing, so one resource each that we think we could reach out to for the next meeting when we come back here. If we could all just take a look at that and then maybe a basic answer to your questions, I think that would be at least a starting point for a real conversation around this topic. Does that sound fair to everyone? Just to take a look at some of the things for the first time that we really haven't even looked at before I brought this up. And to your point, I would get all those questions peppered with them, and as I should be. So this is a good way for us to start that. So, anything else on that? Okay, so it looks like our next, that's the agenda for the next meeting, but it's on October, I'm
Oh,
not sure.
sorry.
That's okay. I look at my,
The first Wednesday in October.
The second.
Second of October, okay. So October 2nd is the next meeting, so we'll further this discussion with some ideas for resources that as a committee we can do, and maybe just assign one person to each thing in between. It does spread out what we need to do and takes a big project and makes it smaller for each of us. So we can do that. Anything else before we take a motion? Okay, I'll take a motion.
No motion.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Second, motion and second, and all in favor say aye. Aye, thank you.